Hello, welcome to This Doesn't Suck. Today I'm doing a little bit of an experiment on baking. I'm doing two things. I'm making a couple of sourdough loaves baked with a mixture of hard white wheat and spelt, because I wanted to see how the spelt would be in there. And then the experiment comes really in doing the baking. I'm going to try something I saw, but then I thought of another variation to it where because I was trying to get the bottom of the loaf not so hot. I've heard many different things, many different techniques. This one kind of interested me. So I'm going to try baking it in a cold oven with a cold pan to start, cold Dutch oven, and bake that one completely. And then I'm going to do the second one with a cold Dutch oven in a hot oven, and see how that goes. And we'll see which one, if the results are worthwhile or if it doesn't really matter. But I'm curious to see how it works out, because I think with a cold Dutch oven, that should actually create a lot more steam from the loaf itself and keep it trapped. But it should be interesting, so we'll see what happens. So first I'm just gonna start mixing up my dough. I have 1,100 grams of flour, which is 900 grams of hard white wheat, and 200 grams of spelt. And I have 450 grams of water. And I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of salt, 4 teaspoons of salt. So I'm doubling it because I use 2 in the regular. And I like to just add it all up. I've tried the different methods with just mixing it up at this point and letting it allyze to absorb all the moisture, but I've done it with the yeast, and I don't really see a difference, so I'm just going to go with the ease here, mix it all up, probably knead it a little bit, and by the way, that's 230 grams of yeast starter that I started last night to get bubbling. So we're just going to mix it all up, and I'm going to let it sit for an hour, and then I'm going to start the stretch and folds. And actually, I just realized I forgot to double the water, so I'm gonna need another 450 grams. So I'm gonna get that, and we'll mix it all up, and then I'll be back with you later. All right, now I've got the right amount of water in there. You can see I've got it all shagged up. So I'm just gonna give this just a little bit of kneading in the hole. That's all it really needs. And then just to make sure everything is combined, and let that sit for an hour, and then I'll come back and do some stretch and folds and probably maybe a little kneading. But you know, it'll create its gluten over time. So we'll get all that set. So I'm just gonna get this covered and let it sit, and it's a little warmer today, so I'm probably just gonna leave it on the counter. All right, we'll be back. All right, we're back for a stretch and fold. Since this is a double batch, I usually try to go and do it a bit more than just 4, trying to go around. But yeah, you can feel by the time you're done stretching it, it's already stiffening up more. All right, we'll just put that upside down, and now we'll start doing this every half hour. This is what makes these covers so great. Number 2. Three. And we're back for number 4. right, so now we're gonna let this proof for a while. It's probably gonna take several hours, 3, 4, whatever. So we'll see you later. All right, we're back. We've had this sitting for about 6 hours in the oven. Unfortunately, in my oven, I made a huge mistake, and I had turned on the proofing function, which sets the oven at 95 degrees. I'd only meant to do it for a little while to get the oven warmed up, shut it off, and then I was gonna leave and run some errands and let it sit. Well, this got a little overproofed, but I think I'm on the borderline, and I've already shaped another loaf, and it came out pretty decent out of the bowl. So, but it is collapsing and it's not holding its thing. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. So we have another experiment other than just the baking. We're going to see, does it work? And that's one of my favorite things to say when presented with a challenge and you're not sure how it's going to go. It'll either work or it won't. So do the best you can and just carry on. So we're going to shape this into roughly two loaves. And I've got my banneton prepared. Fortunately, we're not really doing anything too crazy. And another thing I realized today is I should buy more bannetons, because I just have 2 and I've been using them just to get by, because I figured that's all I needed. I'm not commercial or anything, just baking for friends and family. So I have a cooking bowl that's roughly a little bit bigger than my normal banneton, and I'm just gonna roughly try to shape this thing. Basically, we're gonna dump and see how this goes. Yeah, this one is sticky. This might be a problem. It might have chewed through all that yeast, but we're gonna let it sit overnight, cool down, and see what it does. So yeah, there's really no great shaping to be done here. This is not easy to work with. So we're just getting it in the bowl. So we are not doing bread origami today. We are doing survival 101. And going back to religion, praying it works. After all, in the early days of bread and through most of bread's history, they didn't know what caused it to rise. So it was, I believe it was known as the God factor anyway. So we're going to go back to that today. All right, so I'm going to put these in the fridge, cover them, and put them in the fridge, and we'll see what we've got in the morning.
All right, good morning. Well, this has been in the fridge for roughly 12 hours now. So we're gonna tip these out, and we're gonna bake the first one in a cold oven with a cold pan, and we're gonna see how that does. And then when the oven gets to preheated, I'll get the second one out. When it finally reaches temperature while this one's baking, I'll get the second one out, and we'll bake it in a hot oven with a cold pan, and we'll see where we end up. So let's get this out and see how it looks after 12 hours. If it's set up at all. Because I didn't have a banneton for this one, I just used a baking bowl that I have about the same size, mixing bowl, with a dish rag. Well, it looks all right. So we're just gonna give that a simple crisscross score. It does look a little flat, but the bowl's a little bigger. There you are. just to get some steam going when it gets hot. All right, here we are. Loaf number 2. So the first one's been in about half an hour now. So we're gonna see how that goes. And we're gonna put this one. It's not pretty but the top looks fine. Score it on the side. And we're going to give him my favorite little happy face and hope he opens up. I'm going to get my oven mitts out because I'm going to pull the other one out and we're going to take a look. Ooh. I don't even want to show you. It is very flat. I think this is going to be a very disappointing day. But we'll still bake it and taste it and see what happens. And I have a feeling I'll be trying this again. I may actually mix up a couple more doughs tomorrow and then rebake them and just show the end. And we'll see how it goes. Okay, now it's time for the horrible disappointment that will be the second loaf. Now, I did take the cover off this after 30 minutes. Oh, good grief. So let's give it a temperature reading. All right, we're at 205, so yep, this one's done. You can sort of see the big score and kind of where I scored it like an eyebrow. Although I have to say the bottom isn't as dark. So maybe that ain't all bad, but it's still to get a conclusive thing on how well that bakes. I need to have well-proofed dough. And this one, yeah, they're not as dark as I usually end up having them on the bottom, so this might be a very valid method to cook instead of preheating the oven and all that jazz. Because you definitely cut down on the chance of burning yourself when you're putting the bread in, if you do it in a preheated. But that's not going to be good. All right, to close this out. It's very pale. Look at the inside of that. The texture is horrible. Yeah, the yeast definitely ate up all the sugar yesterday, and there was just nothing left for them to do their job, and that doesn't even look appetizing. So that pretty much falls in the category of, that does suck. So yeah, I'm not even gonna try this. It's not worth it. So we'll be throwing these 2 loaves out, and then I think I'm gonna rebake them and redo them, and I will show you that soon. Okay, here we are this morning. Take 2 on that sourdough experiment. Although I'm changing it up a little bit, I'm just gonna do the cold oven bake. Cold oven, cold pan. We're gonna see how that goes. And then to compare it, the second one I'm gonna preheat in the oven while this one starts. And then we'll add the other one after everything's up to temperature. And we'll go from there. And you can see the bread looks better. That was a bad experience. That was actually the first time I have ever made something in bread form that was unedible. I'm going to add a few ice cubes. That'll help create a little steam. All right, loaf number 2. That is much better. Still pretty dark on the bottom though, so I don't know if that really did much good. But it looks better, so we'll go with it. We're gonna let that cool. We'll get the other one out in about 20 minutes or so. Here's the one I cooked with the regular method coming out of the oven. And that is good. Just from initial appearance and the way that bread felt, it's a little crispier. The crust feels better. It is a little darker on the bottom, because if you look between the two, might be worth a trial. It might be one of those to try the next one, because this is normal method and that is with a cold oven, cold pan. I think next time I might try the cold pan in a hot oven, because I think the pan would heat up faster. So that might create more steam, because this is definitely crispier and this one is softer. Well, we'll let them cool and we'll cut into them later. Okay, we're back to finish out this. We tested the baking of these 2 loaves. Now these are, just to remind you, they're 450 grams of hard white wheat, 100 grams of spelt, and I doubled the recipe, and then it's 450 grams of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, and then 115 grams of yeast starter. Now, I cooked these differently. Now, I did go back and remake these because I had overproofed them, and the other loaves just turned out horrible. The worst things I've ever done. I've never had a loaf turn out that badly. Now, this one was baked in a cold pan with a cold oven, so I put it in the pan, turned the oven on. I put a couple ice cubes in here to create steam. Now, this one, it did spread out a lot because it took the shape of the pan. It actually was meant to be a oblong banneton, and this is what I put it in, and this one ended up being turning more around. They're almost the identical shape, and it actually, because of the temperature, I think it caused it, the slow rise in the temperature, it caused it to spread out more. And this has a very soft crumb. You see it did spread because I scored it once, and the bottom is a little lighter, but you can see the difference because you can see the shape
of the silicone sling that I put it in with, and it did fit on that sling, but it spread out. And then this one is I cooked in a hot stove, in a hot oven with a hot pan and a few cubes of ice thrown in right before I put it in. It's a little darker on the bottom, but not terribly much so, because if you look at them, but this one is crustier. It is to me, it feels much nicer, and it feels more like what you would want in a sourdough loaf. So if you want a softer crust, that might be a way to go, but it's going to spread out. Now let's cut into them and see what they look like on the inside. Okay. So you can see the difference in the two. They're pretty similar. This one looks a little closer, tight grained, and this one's a little more spread out. The only difference is this one, the one I cooked the traditional way with the thicker crust. I cooked. It sat in the fridge for a half hour longer. That's the only difference in the two. Other than that, because it took that long for the pan to warm up. But it feels like my traditional thing. It's nice and soft on the inside, and I did get these up to 210 degrees. And once you freeze them, I like to slice them up, and then after they completely cool, slice them up, and then put them in freezer bags, and put them in the freezer, and then take them out, a couple pieces at a time, or however much, if I'm going to make a sandwich, what have you, and then toast it and make my sandwiches great. It's a great way to have it, and that way you always have it and never goes bad. That doesn't suck, it tastes great. And this one, they're both about the same texture on the inside. They're both soft, taste good. The only real difference is the crust, and I think this one would have been a little taller had I cooked it the original way. Anyway, thanks for watching, and good luck baking, and if you screw it up, try it over again. All right, I was just putting together the video, and my wife had sent me a couple of videos that I wanted to include on the end here, because it's the peanut gallery watching me. One of our dogs, our little Chiweenie Newton, who seemed to be very interested in what I was doing. So enjoy. And I wanted to give a shout out to my nephew Cooper, who seems to like these videos. Maybe I'm not so scary when I'm not there in person. Anyway, thanks and enjoy. Would be in there, and then where somebody. So I was trying to get the bottom of the loaf not so hot. I've heard many different things, many different techniques.